Welcome to Slightly Off Script, the marriage show where we remind you that marriage can be stupid good and wicked fun. I am one of your hosts, Bethany Needham, here with the incredibly handsome Andy Needham.
That's awkward. Hey, Bethany.
Hey, babe.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Are you excited for this?
I'm very excited.
We're in our studio. We got some upgrades.
We're waiting for you to say inappropriate things that I can edit out later.
Story of our life.
That's right.
Feels appropriate.
That's good.
But I can't wait. First real episode.
Yeah.
This could go awesome or it could crash and burn.
We have to be candid with our listeners. This is not our first try at the first episode.
That's how I know it could crash and burn, because it has crashed.
Okay. Yes. That's
And
right.
burned. Okay, here's...
It didn't burn.
It didn't. We attempted to record later in the evening after a doozy of a day. I think we set ourselves up.
That is true.
We're gonna pretend it was a practice run just to try out all the new fun
There
stuff.
are new morning mercies right here in this room today.
Amen. So real quick, before we get into today's episode, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Yeah? Anything exciting you want to share? Any witty banter you'd like to
Witty
throw out there?
banter. Well, you did something really fun last weekend. Why don't you share what you did last weekend?
Ooh, I got to speak at a ladies' conference.
That's right.
It was
Is there a difference between a women's conference and a ladies' conference?
the attendees.
Okay.
And these were ladies.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know how to interpret that, but I'll just let you define it.
No, this was so fun. I got to go to a church in Massachusetts. They were having, basically their church was having an in-house kind of women's conference, retreat, whatever you want to call it. And they were so kind. And I got to stay in an amazing, I want to say Airbnb, but it was this woman's house that she has this incredible gift of hospitality. She has this space made up in her basement, but this is not like...
Basement's just like maybe not the right word. It happens to be in the lower level of her home.
Yeah. I sent Andy video just so that he
I
would
was
be jealous.
It was impressive. I didn't know. I would probably not want to have gone to the event. I would have just wanted to hang out and me and Jesus,
Well, I'm so used to you doing the traveling and
Yeah.
getting to be in all the cool spaces that this was like my opportunity to just like, rub it in. Look at where I am.
Yeah,
right
I
now.
was in a very nondescript courtyard by Marriott.
Yeah, it's true. We did separate. We were both at conferences, different conferences, and it was kind of fun. I like doing things together. Every once in a while, it happens like it did this weekend, but it was cool to think about that we both were getting to serve and use our giftedness in completely different states at the same time.
I was not at a ladies' conference retreat.
Was yours a women's
I
conference?
don't know. No, it was not that either. That's great. That's awesome. And it has been a little while since you've been out speaking. I will say that you were much better prepared. That sounds like a backhanded compliment. There's been other times when you have spoken where at the last minute you're like really doing a lot of preparation. Very
in panic
late
mode.
Yes.
It's interesting that you say that, because in all candor, the thing that I noticed, learned, however you want to say it, maybe experienced this time. This is the first time that I've done a speaking event since I have been diagnosed with ADHD and also decided to go on medication for it. And I noticed a massive difference for me.
Wow.
So from everything from being able to focus to the closer I got, not having that panic of, oh my goodness. My experience in the past has been when I've wanted to do these things, like I love to speak. I even love the preparation, but it's almost like the work ahead of time feels at times like this massive, overwhelming amount of work. And this time, it wasn't like it was less work. In fact, I probably put more time into it, but that I actually was able to focus and enjoy the process of preparing and getting ready for it. So
That's amazing.
yeah, that was a big one for me.
So if you would like to have Bethany come to speak at your event, or maybe you've had her to an event before and you'd like to learn what the medicated version of Bethany is like
I think we all would like to
before and
know.
after. No,
I've been medicated all along. I just think I've been on the wrong medication.
Okay, yeah, that happens. So yeah.
Yeah, shout out to my fellow ADHDers who probably are already
They're skipping forward.
The episode. I can't even be mad. I feel that. So
yes. So what are we going to talk about today?
All right, first episode, we've kind of gone back and forth on this, but decided that since we don't really know who's going to listen, if it's just going to be our moms or, maybe other people who know us, don't know us, it might be a good idea just to share a brief picture of our story and help other people get to know us. I also want to throw out there that as we share this, if people have questions or comments, complaints, just kidding.
One of the things that we decided to do with this podcast was to request questions from people in our lives. And hopefully listeners, if you have questions, we're going to leave a link for how you can do that. But to set up, we're going to talk about life now to start. And so our friend Danielle sent in a question. Do you want me to try this out, the technology, see if it works?
Yes.
All right, let's try this. Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go.
Hello. I would like to ask a question about how your marriage has been affected by this new empty nest. So your birds are starting to fly as your kids are heading both off to college. How has it affected your marriage? And how has it possibly improved it? I would love to know all the things about empty nest life.
All right. So that's where we are. Empty nest life.
That was the coolest technology I have ever experienced since podcasting. Also, now I miss my friend Danielle and kind of want to hang out with her.
Well, do you want to answer the question?
Yeah. So empty nest. First of all, we were taught a phrase, I don't remember who taught it to us, that we have kind of grabbed hold of, which is rather than empty nest, we like to refer to it as an open nest.
I think it was Karen, our friend Karen.
Was it?
Yeah.
Karen's always good
She's
for
got
the
lots
real
of wisdom. Yep.
Yeah, love that. But yeah, open nest, because the reality is we have 2 kids in college, and there is a good chance that these birds are going to land back in the nest at some point in time. So keeping that open nest, granted, we did turn one of their bedrooms into a podcast
We don't want the
studio.
nest to be too comfortable for them.
We're going to have to put a little cot under this table or something. But no, there's kind of that sense that they are out, both of them full time in school. And I would say for me, I'm going to go on the positive here, the play side of our marriage. And I don't mean that in like a rated whatever way, but also. But just kind of the freedom to have fun together. We have really enjoyed even just evenings out. We love to find those restaurants that do
small plates or happy hour deals. Yes.
Yes. We found some places that did like half price tacos. You just got to get there early with the crowd. That is really our crowd, the old people crowd.
I think the line I use is small plates, home by 8. That's been our goal.
Absolutely. Like these are life goals.
Yes.
We're not partying out late, but
there's no clubbing going on.
No, unless it's Sam's Club and there's a good deal.
We don't need to go to Sam's Club.
It's true. We will never get through this amount of toilet paper with just the 2 of us. But yeah, no, I think it has been a lot of fun. The other thing that I would say is there is a side of it, and again, we're so early on in this, but that requires a little more intentionality in terms of, I'll use dinner, for example. Like at this stage without kids, sometimes it can be easy to not think ahead about dinner, at least for me, mostly because you do all the cooking, but actually making sure that we're still taking care of ourselves, like eating healthy and not just last minute decisions on things, and just sitting down together for dinner. Not that you have to do that all the time, but with 2 of us, it can be so easy just to kind of breeze through those things because you don't have kids like, what's for dinner? I'm hungry. There's nothing in the fridge.
Well, we said this on our preview episode too, but we definitely are believers that every season, and we're learning right now. I think there's definitely still a learning curve of like, what does this reality look like? But we're experiencing joys. We're going to experience challenges of it. But let's go back a little bit and kind of zoom back through our story. This is just going to be kind of a flyover. We'll touch the plane down a few different points in our story. This month, we celebrate 22 years of marriage, which is exciting. But we haven't had that much time without kids. But we'll just quickly, pre-marriage, what do you remember about meeting this guy named Andy.
I'm ready for this. Okay.
Okay.
Now I'm going to be the one that's trying to real fast forward.
Okay.
So pull the reins if you want. But here we go. So I was 16 when we met. People who know us are aware of that, but some people are still kind of shocked that think about your 16-year-old kid. I was a baby. And you were 18, my boss.
Just learned to
and
shave.
There was clearly no HR in this. Just kidding. So you were my boss. Personality wise, I was at that stage in life the extreme of my extrovert, bubbly, whatever you want to call it. I pretty sure I had like pink streaks in my hair, was just all energy. And you, sir, were kind of the extreme of your introverted, quiet, not making eye contact phase of life.
Peak nerddom, whereas you were peak sporty, great with kids, which definitely was one of the things that attracted me to you. So.
Yeah. And so we met at a summer camp, and it took almost the whole summer for
you to figure out what was going on.
Yeah. Truthfully, I missed all the cues.
They were bad cues, but you did miss them all.
in my defense, you were awkward at flirting. I didn't receive it as flirting, but then by the end of the summer, we had determined that we definitely had a mutual interest in one another and started
We
dating.
went MySpace official. I don't know what it was.
Yes. I think that's how you asked me out. Do you have a MySpace?
It was an AOL Instant Messenger, which we did use a lot for our relationship. So
yeah, most of our dating relationship was spent long distance.
Yep. You had to finish high school and then went to Bible school.
Yeah.
I was going right into ministry at 18, trying to find my way.
And it was a very different world. I just want to give a quick picture, like long distance relationships when we were 16 and 18. We did not have cell phones. That was not a thing.
There was no Zoom.
There was no Zoom. There was no video
FaceTime.
chat. In fact, if we wanted even to do the sort of texting, the AOL Instant Messenger, there was always the complication of the computers used your phone line back then. And so I had to go sneak down to the church. I was a pastor's kid at the time.
Sneak to the church. That
Sneak
sounds
to the
so
church.
scandalous.
Yes, I was very rebellious. When the church was closed, I could go on the computer and I wouldn't have to worry about my family being like, I need to make a phone call, get off the internet. It was a different time.
I was using calling cards off the internet to call you in Canada. There's all kinds of stories that like our kids are like, you sound like
Craziness.
you live with the cavemen. So
Yeah. And we almost did, but we stayed together and continued to date long distance. There were some letters. I would visit the camp. That's primarily where we saw each other. I would come volunteer. And then the summertime, I would also volunteer. And you decided, like, I'm going to marry this girl, literally, when I was a girl. And
Sounds so inappropriate. We were 18 and 21 by that point, and I did ask your dad. Later, he's like, I'd let you marry my daughter at 18. I think he's happy about that now, but he maybe thought twice about it in our early marriage.
according to him, did not remember that I was only 18.
You are the fifth child and the only girl, so he was at that point, he was like, someone will take my daughter. This is great.
It's true. At that point, just choosing to get married and not go to prison in my family was like,
success.
I was a success story.
You were a success story.
So winning.
Yeah, so we got married 22 years ago.
Yeah.
And we had a great wedding. You had way more people in your bridal party than I had friends. So I was like, we have to stop because I'm going to have to just start asking random people to be at my wedding party because how many bridesmaids did you have?
It wasn't that many. It was like 7.
7.
maybe.
Okay. If you don't think that's
You
too,
cut me off at 7.
that was like it's a very holy number. Your first time on an airplane was our honeymoon.
Yeah.
You didn't have your driver's license when we got married.
Correct.
I had to help teach you how to parallel park. You are a very good driver now, which I take credit for. I make you do all the driving.
True.
And then we got married and it was happily ever after and nothing went wrong.
No, that's why I'm telling the story.
Okay.
Not only was it not happily ever after, but we got married, and so here's what I'll say. A lot of people who hear our story hear the part or they sort of see wow, you guys got married young and like have this beautiful
You're 40 and you have all this freedom.
Yeah, romantic love story. And I always like to be upfront that this did not come without some serious hard-fought battles. And a lot of those, not all of them, but a lot of them were in those early years of our marriage. it was a rough go at the beginning for a number of reasons. And honestly, I think we're going to have other episodes where we dig more into that. It's not really an easy flyover story.
Stay tuned for episode 7, all of Bethany's problems.
How,
Mine will be a mini series.
how Bethany almost ruined our marriage.
Yeah.
Only an episode. That's pretty impressive.
I mean, a couple of things that come to mind in that season, though, and we'll talk more about this in a minute, but there were some key people that showed up for us in hard times. And I think so learning like what true repentance looked like. And then the other thing that I think God eventually did is that early conflict for us was sort of against our marriage. Like it was against the covenant of marriage. We have learned over time in the grace of God through the community of his people to have our conflict within the context of the covenant of our marriage. And so it's within our marriage versus against our marriage. I don't know. There wasn't like a switch that flipped, but I feel like God over time has led us on that journey, which has been a really beautiful one.
Yeah. No, I would agree. Short of shifting that attention from fighting each other to realizing it was almost like we got on the same team and we realized that we had the same enemy.
Yeah, same goal, same purpose.
Yeah. And the enemy that wanted to ruin our marriage, we were like,
yeah, and we also had
punch
to
'em
learn.
where
We had
the
to learn
sun
our
don't
blind
shine.
spots, and we'll talk more about that in the episodes to come. But it wasn't too long that our family of 2 became a family of 3, and then a family of 4. We had the 5-year plan. That was the 5-year plan.
everybody has the 5-year plan.
Yes.
Some people it works for. For us, we made the decision to go on birth control, and it didn't matter because I still got pregnant, and very much remember the morning that we found out. And I was well into the pregnancy at this point.
You spent that first trimester treating. What did you think you had? UTIs or
Different,
something?
yeah, different infections. Turns out it was not an infection.
It was a
It
child.
was Josiah David Needham.
A blessing from the Lord, Josiah.
Yes.
We love you.
So yeah, found out. And then our kids are less than 2 years apart. So that early on in marriage, we were living at camp. You were on staff at camp. We had little kids. So I really didn't do nearly as much in terms of on platform, or people who see us now, they see a lot more of that. But early on, unless we had babysitters or someone, I
You were
home
the
with
best
kids.
camp games leader of all time. We had a lot of fun with that. But that was a rare
That
thing.
was fun.
And that was a kind of an exception. So
Yeah.
very true.
So spent a lot of time when the kids were young, just being a mom, and honestly loved those early years. They were not that they were easy, but there was something really special about our kids were so cute when they were little. And when they say words and they're not
Cute little sinners.
yeah, they were adorable. And so, yeah, it was a sweet time in our family. And around that same time, Josiah was 4, Mercy was 2. God called us from camping ministry into church ministry.
Yeah, we went from living pretty close to where I grew up in a rural context at the camp where everything was provided, and then moving down to a very suburban context, serving in a church. We did a lot of ministry together. We made lifelong friends through that season. God was so good and faithful. I was on staff at the church for about 3.5 years, and then you were on staff at the church for 6.5, a total of 11 years that we were part of that community, living in that area, and a lot of milestones for our kids. I traveled full-time with the band for a little over 3 years. We bought our first house, a 1707 colonial that was older than America, and everybody told us was a foolish idea to buy.
Fair enough.
We thought that a couple times. I mean,
Yeah.
especially the day we bought it and the basement flooded and we were cutting into the kitchen floor.
And the snakes.
There
Don't forget
there
the
were
snakes.
also snakes. And it was like we bought a zoo. It was kind of
It was on accident. We
Yeah.
didn't know we were buying a zoo.
yeah. But that was an awesome season. Anything to add to that part of our lives?
I look back on those years and our time in Massachusetts, even though there were hard things in it, I definitely see it was fruitful years of ministry and just some of the sweetest memories, and also to this day, some of my closest friends, and very grateful to have had the community that we had when we were there, because we did walk through some really hard things as parents, and even with our own parents and different family dynamics, but God was so faithful. And yeah, the one thing that always stands out to me when I think back was just community when we
Absolutely.
were there, and the community that God gifted us was incredible in that season. So it was very hard to leave, but
Yeah, I mean that season was also when the house that we bought in Massachusetts was when my parents first came to live with us. They lived with us now for 10 years, and I was changing roles in the ministry that I was working in, which meant that I needed to be in New Hampshire more often. And so in 2019, we made the very difficult but good decision that we would relocate. My parents decided that they wanted to move with us. I'll tell you one thing we learned in that is that people's definition of an in-law apartment ranges everything from something that you would see in a horror movie to like something that you'd want to live in. And we were trying to be like
Yes.
more on the something you'd want to live in. And
We actually like your parents.
we like it. Yes, we do. We
So
enjoy it.
we're not trying to put them
No.
in some of these dungeons that we were
Yeah, it's
looking
like, is
at.
that the sun? No. So we found this beautiful home, and that's even a story how God provided this house. It was funny we lived on a very busy street in Massachusetts with probably like thousands of cars going by, near accidents outside of our house all the time. I always remember when we moved in and we turned off the lights the first night, and it was so dark and so quiet that you could almost hear the silence. And we're like, I guess we live in New Hampshire now.
I'm pretty sure we had to put on white noise
Yeah.
because it was so unfamiliar. The quiet was, we just weren't used to it.
No, and this has been a really beautiful place to live. We're glad, especially God's provision, not knowing that there was a global pandemic on the horizon, to be able to be in this little neighborhood and getting to know our neighbors around the fire pit. Just a real kind of a good place to be during that season. I mean, everybody else was moving to New Hampshire once the pandemic hit, so we got a little ahead of that. And it's been really good.
It has been. I think there's been beautiful parts to this last 5 years or so while we've been here. But also, I think this has been some years of pruning
Yeah.
in our family and our individually. Like we've walked through some things in not pruning like negative as in it's been really hard, but things that I can even look at now and be like, wow, God has just been doing this really hard but incredible work in our lives. Where we stand now, I can see some of the new growth from that, and I'm very, very grateful for it. It's also sitting here recording a podcast with you thinking, I feel like we're sort of on this cusp of God is sort of leading us into something which we don't 100% know what it looks like, but you've said it before, and I love this description that this has been a season where God has been incredibly near, but not always clear. And that's just
Clear to us. He's clear to himself.
Oh, yeah. He knows what he's
He knows what
doing.
he's doing.
But he hasn't,
There's
at this
no
point,
burning bushes, no flaming.
yeah, he's not chosen to let us in on the secret. And that's okay because, one, obviously his timing in that, but two, I think even in that, it's been something that has drawn us closer to him and closer to one another in this season. I very much treasure our long walks, many, many long walks of processing and praying, just being, again, sort of on this team together of we don't know what God is doing. We don't know where he's leading us, but we know that he's calling us to go together. And that part excites us. So
Yeah, another phrase that I often say is like we want to move at the speed of the Spirit. Like sometimes like God slows us down and he's like, I'll just sit here for a little while. And I'm like, no, I want to go. And other times we, have that resistance to movement because
Yeah.
it's not direction or not a comfortable movement. I always kind of draw back to, we were sitting with a young married couple that are in ministry in central New York, Cooper and Julia. We see you. They're having a baby like any day right now. Maybe they already had it.
so excited.
Yeah, but I remember sitting across from them and just having such great conversation with them about life, about marriage. And Julia looked over at us and was like, so as an older couple in all of your years of, and I was like,
It was like, ooh.
yeah, you kind of called it out. You're like, I just need to pause for a second. This is where we are. And
Yeah. He
It's a
wasn't
moment.
wrong.
No, she was, and
We
it
just
was,
were
and we
in
had a great
denial.
conversation, but it was that, because in some ways getting married young, you've always been the young couple and we're still young for the stage of life, but we have lived 22 years of marriage. We've walked through some really difficult things. I always try to pay attention to the questions that people ask you. Like, what are the questions that people ask you repeatedly? It's always a discernment of like one of the ways that God wants to use you. And increasingly more of our questions have been about marriage. We have the privilege of helping a couple right now through premarital counseling. We've met with friends and others, and not all counseling. Sometimes it's just coaching, a relationship, and just very positive, forward-looking things. And we've been like, we find a lot of joy. And I find when we're in those moments that one of the things I enjoy is getting to see the way that our very different perspectives, experiences, and gifts work together.
Yeah. And it also, for me, has been very much birthed out of this burden of, in 22 years of marriages, now having witnessed so many marriages fall apart. I feel like the further along we get in marriage, part of what people are noting when they're talking to us about our marriage is like, how have you been married for 22 years? And in the grand scheme of things, like we're still early on here. Like we know people who've been years and years ahead of us, but what does it look like for us at this stage to intentionally pour into people, encourage people in their marriages, and remind people that yes, marriage is work. There is a side of it that marriage really can be so good and so fun. And when you put in the work, when you walk this journey together, fight these fights together, that there's really beauty in it. And that's our hope in this podcast as we talk through things, is to keep shining the light on just the beauty of marriage and celebrate.
And I think in a world that is so divided and marriage is almost seen like the ball and chain and like that negative perspective, somebody who speaks highly of marriage, joyfully of marriage, sincerely, again, not roses and rainbows, but that is actually an apologetic for the gospel in our culture today. And so I think that that's one of the things I want to see us do, is kind of reclaim that, like, and even the way we talk about it, because I think there can almost be a sense, and, I don't know if you feel this too, but sometimes when it's like when you have good things in your life or good things in your marriage, that you kind of want to qualify that and be like, well, it's not all great,
Right.
like, and that is true. And I think it's in some ways you need to say that, but sometimes we don't overcorrect the other side, and it's like, and it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I 1,000% agree. And it is one of those things where I don't think we say it enough. And I think there are people, especially younger people now, who are not in a stage of marriage, who some of them need to hear this and be encouraged about the covenant and the relationship of marriage. Because one of the things that is happening is less and less people getting married.
Yeah.
And I totally understand the sort of fear that can be built when you just have a lot of negative
Yep.
sort of examples in front of you. But just taking the time to celebrate and give a picture for people who, for people who are married, to encourage them in their marriage, and for people who are considering someday, if this is part of their story, getting married, that they can actually be excited about it.
Absolutely. I think if there was a core message, and we, again, you said it in sort of our intro, that, marriage can be stupid good and wicked fun. We want to be championing that, and we want to be helping other people walk through the hard things so that they can experience that reality and not miss the joy that God gives in this beautiful gift that he has given to us. And so what is ahead for the podcast, Bethany? Like, where are we going? Maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the interviews that you're thinking about just broadly, and then some of the topics we want to hit on too.
Yeah. So first and foremost, we're going to kind of start out, not in this episode, but moving forward, talking about some of the values that we have put on paper in our conversations. What are our top 4 values in marriage? And then one of the things we got to brainstorm is we thought through each individual value is, who are some marriages that we actually look at and we're like, wow, they are like killing it in this area, or they've been an example to us in this area, or they've fought some hard battles to gain ground in this area. Those are kind of the interview side of things. When we pull some couples in, we'll be hearing stories other than ours, because just our story is only going to be so helpful because it's just us, but how we learn from one another. And again, without giving too much away, one of those values is community. And so part of what we wanted to do in this podcast is actually introduce more than just us, but other people within our community.
You're teasing out the next episode. It's like you've done this before.
Once Upon a Time. Check it out.
So,
Hey Girl Podcast.
Yeah. So we're going to be playing around with the format a little bit, but typically what you're going to find the next 4 episodes, and we'll get feedback and we'll refine it, is you and I will kind of have an intro part where we'll talk about an idea for a little while, and then we'll kick to an interview. And like we did today, we would love to have questions. We want this to be as helpful as we possibly can make it. And one of the ways that it can be very helpful is if people share with us the things that they are curious about. We've been working on this studio space, and we will have all of our episodes on YouTube. One thing you can do for us to help us as we grow this platform is we need to get to 500 subscribers in order to be able to do a couple of things with YouTube. And we're like at 310 last time I checked. So we need a few more subscribers. Even if you don't watch on YouTube, but you happen to have an account, just go on there, hit the subscribe button. That's a free way that you can help us. But we'll still have this coming out in audio on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the different platforms. It's not on MySpace, but other than that, it's a.
I don't think anyone's on MySpace
Yeah, no.
anymore.
But we do, as I mentioned in the preview episode, we do have a TikTok. So
Yeah, we do.
So
And if you would like for Andy to learn a dance on TikTok or some type
No,
of
that's not
TikTok
a thing.
trend, yeah, send in your votes.
that is not a thing.
If we get 1,000 likes on the, I'm just kidding. If we get 500 subscribers on YouTube,
Oh, what's the deal?
then I bet you I can talk him into.
It is not going to be impressive.
It is going to be entertaining.
I feel like I've just sold my soul, but it's okay.
You have.
Okay.
Yeah, 500. Let's do it.
Oh, no. We have a couple friends that I feel like are going to be very motivated towards that. And whether they're interested in this podcast or not, just for the humiliation factor.
Yeah. Also, send me some suggestions
No,
on
no.
TikTok trends that you want to see
Yeah.
from
If the
Andy.
person is under the age of 30, I will not. I want like a granny dance or something like that.
Granny dance. Yes, Andy doing the granny dance.
So
Let's go.
Yeah, so we're working on weekly releases of episode, and our next episode will come out a week from this release, coming out on Mondays, and we will be talking about one of our values, which is
Community.
community. Our next episode is about community. So anything else you want to say before we get going?
I don't think so. I think we covered it all. This was fun, though.
You did great.
Yeah. I hope it was fun for them.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Yeah. Let us know by subscribing so we can get that granny dance.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.